Hey everyone, if you're into tanks, World War II history, or just love a good debate about which machine ruled the battlefield, this is for you. Today I'm diving into the why American M4 Sherman tank was the best medium tank of World War II, not the Soviet T-34. World War II was a wild time, full of epic battle, brave soldiers, and machines that changed the game. Tanks were the heavy hitters on the battlefield, and everyone got an opinion on which one was the king. You probably heard that the Soviet T-34 and the ultimate tank too simple and a symbol of victory. But hold up, I'm here to tell you why the American M4 Sherman deserved that crowd. Don't get me wrong, the T-34 was a beast in its one way, but when you dig into the details, the Sherman comes out on top. Let's break it down with a fresh look, some economic background, and a whole lot of lesson why the Sherman was the real MVP. The 34 is practically a legend and tank history. It's got this reputation as the tank that won the war for the Soviets, with the sloped armor and rugged design. But here's the thing, history gets messy. Winners write the story and sometimes they polish it up to make their side look better. The T-34 legend has been hyped up, but it had some serious flaws, especially early in the war. Let's set the stage with some context. When World War II kicked off, the Soviet Union had a ton of tanks, about 23,000 total, with 13,000 packed along their western border. Germany, on the other hand, rolled in with 6,500 tanks, including 4,300 on the Eastern Front. You'd think the Soviets' huge number would crush the German, right? Wrong. By fall 1941, the Germans were dominating. Why? Because most of the Soviet tank, including the T-34, was breaking down left and right. The T-34 big problem was its design. The engine, called V2, was a disaster in the early years. It lasted about 100 hours on a test stand and only 45 to 70 hours in actual combat. Compare the German tanks, which could go 200 to 254 hours, or the Sherman, which hit to 180 to 320 hours. That's a huge difference. The T-34 was like a car that breaks down every other week, while the Sherman was a reliable pickup truck you could count on. Another issue was the air filter. The T-34 air cleaner was so bad that dust got into the engine, causing it to overheat and fail. In the summer of 1942, during the Battle of Stalingrad, 400 T-34 showed up to fight. A week later, only 70 were left. 260 of them didn't get knocked out by enemy fire. They just broke down. Engine failed, transmission gave out, and Soviet commanders were furious. Even Joseph Stalin sent angry letter to the tank factories demanding fix it. It wasn't until spring 1943 that they finally got a decent air filter, but by then the tank had been struggling for 2 years. Then their transmission. Picture this. You're a Soviet tank driver in the middle of a battle, and to shift gear, you need the Slamge hammer. No joke. A driver keep hammer next to them to bash gear shift into pace, especially going from second to third gear. That's not exactly what you want when bullets are flying. The Sherman, smooth better, its gears shifted like a dream, no hammer required. Now let's talk about the M4 Sherman. This tank was a masterpiece of American engineering, built to be reliable, user-friendly, and tough. One big reason it was so good. the way it was made. In the United States, factories like General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler were pumping out Sherman like nobody business. In 1944 alone, the USA produced 17,000 Shermans, more than all that tanks Germany made that year. American workers were well trained, well paid, and working in modern factory. That means fewer mistakes and better quality. In the Soviet Union, things were different. The war hit their industry hard. Many factories were moved to rural mountains where they were rebuilt from scratch in tough condition. Workers, often women, teenagers, or even kids, worked 12-hour shift with little food or rest. They were heroes, no doubt, but the lack of experience and brutal condition led to a lot of defective tanks. In 1942, up to 6% of T-34 broke down because it's shoddy assembly. That's not the work's fault, it's just what happens where a country fighting to survive. The Sherman had other advantages too. Its optics were top-notch. The T-34 SIG were so bad that German tanks who captured them couldn't believe Soviet gunners could hit anything. The Germans' optics were clear with a wide view, making it easier to spot a hit target. Plus, it had a stability for the gun, which means you could shoot accurately while moving. The T-34, you had to stop, wait the suspension to settle, and then aim. And the fast-moving battle, that's a huge disadvantage. Radios were another big deal. Until the Battle of Kursk in 1943, most T-34 didn't have a radio. Then commanders had to use a flag or shot through speaking tubes, radio old school for a modern war. Every Sherman came with a reliable radio so crews could coordinate like pros. A Soviet tank commander named Dmitry Loza, who later became a hero of the Soviet Union, wrote a book called Tank Driver on a Foreign Tank. He spent years and a half fighting in Sherman and loved it. It said everything worked perfectly, from the control to the radio. Here's a cool detail. The Sherman had a small gasoline generator on board to charge its battery. If the battery was low, you just fire up the generator and boom, good to go. On the T-34, you had to rev the engine to full power, the charge or the battery, which burned fuel and won out the motor. Little things like that made the Sherman a dream of operate. Let's compare the nuts and bolts. The T-34-76 had 45 mm of frontal armor and 40 mm on the sides. The upgrade T-34-85 bumped the side armor to 45 mm. The Shermans had a 51 mm in front and 38 on the sides. Not a huge difference, but the Sherman's armor was better quality, tougher and more viscous, meaning it absorbed hits better. When a shell hit the T-34 without penetration, the impact could still create splinters inside, killing or injuring the crew. The Sherman didn't have that problem. As for guns, the T-34-76 had a 76mm cannon with a muzzle velocity of 655 meters per second. The Sherman 75mm gun was stronger, with a muzzle velocity of 792 meters per second. Later, the T-34-85 got an 85mm gun, and the Sherman got a 76mm one. The American gun was slightly less powerful than the Soviet one, but the British version of the Sherman, called the Firefly, had a 76.2mm gun that outdid the T-34 85mm. So it's a term of firepower, it's pretty much a tie. with a slight edge to the Sherman in some case. No tank is perfect, and the Sherman had its flaws. Its center of gravity was higher than the T-34, what means it could tip over or on round terrain. The T-34 tracks were 500 mm wide, giving a better traction in mud or snow, while the Sherman were 421 mm. The T-34 also had a beefier engine, 500 horsepower compared to the Sherman 400. So if you were diving through a swamp, the T-34 was your friend. But let's be real, in most battle reliability and crew comfort mattered more than off-road skill. The Sherman was built to keep going, and its crew can focus on fighting, not fixing the tank. That's a big deal when you're in the heat of battle. To really understand why the Sherman was better, we need to look at an economic behind it. The United States in the 1940s was an industrial powerhouse. Factories were humming, workers were skilled, and the economy was booming. By 1944, the USA was producing more tanks, planes, and ships than anyone else. The Sherman's production line was a well-oiled machine with quality control that ensured every tank was up to spec. In total, the USA built over 50,000 Sherman during the war. That's insane. The Soviet Union, meanwhile, was fighting for its life. The German invasion destroyed much of their industry, and factories had to be moved thousands of miles to the east. Workers faced brutal conditions, freezing workshop, long hours, and barely enough food to survive. Many were inexperienced, having never worked in factory before. Despite this challenge, the Soviet churned out 60,000 T-34, including 25,000 on the improved T-34-85 model. That's incredible, but the rush production mean a lot of tanks were duds. Up to 60% of the T-34 in 1942 had defect right out the factory. The USA sent 4,100 to Shermans to Soviet Union through the Lend-Lease program. That's a small fraction compared to the T-34 numbers, but Soviet tankers loved them. They called the Sherman MCHA, the M4, and praised reliability and easy of use. In a war where every second counted, a tank that didn't break down was a lifesaver. So why do you think the Sherman was the best medium tank of World War II? It's simple. It was built better, worked better, and treated its crew better. The T-34-76, which the Soviet used for the first half of the war, was a mess. Unreliable engines, bad optics, no radio. The T-34-85 was a big improvement, but it came too late to steal the show. The Sherman, on the other hand, was solid from day one. Its optic, radio, and stabilizer made it a joy to fight in. At its durability mean it could stay in the fight longer. Don't get me wrong, the T-34 was crucial to the Soviet victory. Its sheer number over the helmet of the German, and that no small feat. But when you're talking about quality, the Sherman's like a Cadillac, while the T-34 was more like a beat-up old truck. Both got the job done, but one was a lot smoother. Before I wrap up, let's clear up one thing. The German Panzer tank. Some folk think it was a medium tank because it had a 76mm gun, but that's not how it worked. The Soviet Kiwi-1 had a 76mm gun too, and everyone agrees it was a heavy tank. The Panzer weighed 45 tons, almost the same as the Kiwi-1, 47 tons. The T-34 and Sherman were much lighter, around 30 tons, with a thinner armor. The Panzer's frontal armor was 80 mm thick. The German wanted the Panzer to be a medium tank, but it was too big and heavy. Both the USA and Soviet classified it a heavy tank, so I'm sticking with comparing the Sherman to the T-34, not the Panzer. Let's not forget the people behind the tanks. Soviet tankers were heroes fighting against insane odds with wherever they had. The T-34 mass production helped the Soviet outnumbers the Germans, and that was a game changer. But the Sherman's quality gave its crew an edge. Less time fixing, more time fighting. Americans tanker, like the Soviet counterparts, were brave, but they had the luxury of a tank that didn't fight them as much as those the enemy. The Sherman's success wasn't just about the tank itself. It was about the system behind it. The USA economy in the 1940s was a juggernaut. According to history data, the USA GDP grew from $101.4 billion in 1940 to $223 billion by 1945. In 1940 dollars, the massive increase fueled by wartime production. The USA could afford to build high-quality tanks and ship them to allies like the Soviet Union and Britain. The Lend-Lease program sent over $14 billion worth of aid to the allies, including those 4,102 Shermans. The Soviet economy, meanwhile, was stretched to the break point. The German invasion destroyed thousands of factories that Soviet had rebuilt while under attack. By 1942, Soviet industrial output was down to 68% of its pre-war level. Despite this, they managed to produce 6,000 T-34 and testament to their determination. But quantity came at the cost of quality, and that's where the Sherman shines. Today, the Sherman and T-34 are both iconic. Museums around the world display them, and tank enthusiasts argue endlessly about which was better. The T-34 legacy is tied to the Soviet Union's survival and victory, while the Shermans represent American ingenuity and industrial might. Both deserve respect, but I'm sticking with the Sherman as a champ. Alright, folks, what do you think? Is the M4 Sherman the unsung hero of World War II, or does the T-34 still hold the crown in your book? Drop your through the comments on a hero to you take. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit the subscribe button. We have got more stories about tank plans and the wild story history of World War II coming your way. Let's keep the conversation going, and thank you so much, and bye bye.